Now I invite the next speaker. Can I ask Mahendra to start the session, please? Now, Mr. Mahendra, as I said, is from SUEZ. They have implemented a number of public-private partnerships. We will hear from their perspective what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and how they are progressing, particularly in Karnataka. Over to you, Mahendra.
Okay, thank you, Professor Chari, for this opportunity to participate in this webinar. I'll be very happy to present our experiences that we have, that we had in the last 10 years in India. But first of all, let me say that it's very, very heartening to see the success in Puri and Malkapur. Both of them actually show that how political will can help in making complex things possible. I mean, this is something that we should always remember, that water distribution or any such urban service where there is a strong political will is extremely important to make it work. Okay. Fortunately, unfortunately, we are a private sector company. We are constrained by the client and the demands of the contract. But having said this, we still are very proud of some of the achievements that we have achieved over the years in various parts of India. Let me just share the presentation and then we can talk. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. We can see your screen, sir.
Okay.
Requesting
sure.
to make it full screen, sir, like presentation mode.
So, yeah, I will do that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, this is a challenge now because
sir, it's on the bottom right. On the where you can zoom in, zoom out, right beside it on the left.
No, just go, Mahendra, why don't you go to the bottom? There is a slider. Next to the slider is the full screen. Just bottom.
Okay, let me do one thing. Okay.
We can still see. I mean, you can continue. You can still see.
Yeah, because actually I'm using a projector, so that's the reason probably.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so I will try in the meantime. So as I said, I mean while the topic here is I've been asked to specifically talk about our experience in Karnataka, but I will also briefly talk about what SUEZ is and then the kind of work that we are doing in other parts of the world. SUEZ, very briefly, is a 160-year-old company headquartered in Paris. We are a global leader in water and waste management. Specifically in India, we are present for last 40 years. Wherein we have built a lot of marquee water treatment and wastewater treatment plant projects. But at the same time, in the last 10 years, we have taken 9 water distribution projects, and that's which is very popularly known in India as the 24/7 business. I mean, although this is a catch-all word which has become very popular. But when we talk about 24/7 projects, I mean, each of these projects has the scope and the requirement of achieving several other performance metrics so as to improve the overall service delivery. This actually shows the footprint of the water distribution or the 24/7 business that we have in the country. As you can see, the largest project that we have in India is Coimbatore, which has got a population of about 1 million, about 150,000 connections. This is a project that we started in 2018. One of the first projects that we did in the country was in Delhi, part of South Delhi called Malviya Nagar, and so on and so forth. Over the years, in the last 3 years, we had a string of successes in Karnataka. All projects are funded by ADB. orchestrated and I would say facilitated by KUADC. And here I must say that KUADC, which has gained tremendous experience in this kind of project in the last several, I would say in the last 2 decades. I mean, that's actually a delight, because with that kind of capacity, you know, it's more easy for us to show some progress. One thing which I would say is that out of those 9 projects which we are doing in the country, all of them have different project objectives and they have different contract structure. And when we look at the contract structure, you will find that most of the projects also show, I mean, it shows the priority of the client. For example, the concession, the Malviya Nagar project in Delhi is a concession model, you know, which is NRW driven, because we are paid on volume billed and collected basis. So that basically means that NRW is inbuilt in the model. So we are taking the demand risk, we are taking the performance risk, and we take the collection risk as well. So Delhi Jal Board supplies us a fixed volume of water at the entry point, at the beginning of the battery limit, okay, and which we are supposed to distribute to the consumers, and also we are also responsible for meter reading, billing, and collection. Okay, here the utility's ambition was to become self-sustainable through user charges, and so that's why DJB actually came up with a very very thought-through tariff policy, and through a geo, they actually came with a policy that they will be increasing tariff by 10% every year for the first 5 years. And that's why today Delhi has got a reasonably, I would say, reasonably high tariff, which ensures reasonable self-sustainability of the utility. Okay? Since here the client asked us to start O&M parallelly with the construction activities, it was possible for us to improve service delivery all along, even when the construction is ongoing. So here, as I said, that while the project is called 24/7 supply, I mean, that's also an objective, but with the revenue model and with the metrics and with the focus of the client, the emphasis here is more on improving customer relationship, improving customer satisfaction, reduction of NW, and things like that. Okay. On the other hand, most of the projects in Karnataka, whether it's Davanagere, Bangalore, Udupi, Puttur, and even Calcutta, these are all ADB funded projects. ADB in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years has come up with a standard bidding document or standard contract structure, which has BOQ based construction driven program. Okay, so the contract here or the document here is very prescriptive. I mean, it basically tells us how to go about constructing DMAs one by one. Okay, and there is a BOQ which allows us to bill based on the works that we do within DMA. Okay, so here I would say the emphasis here is more on infrastructure creation. Okay, and although we have the KPIs like 24/7 NRW, customer relationship management, but let's not forget that they all come into play only when the O&M starts. So later, when I explain one of the projects, I mean, and only then the operator actually starts operating. Okay, so that's the structure. So we are, that's why I say that we as a bidder are constrained by this contract structure and project objectives. So even if we want gradual improvement of service delivery, sometimes these contract structures do not allow us to do that. Okay. Last but not the least, I mean, we also have a very interesting project structure in Coimbatore city, which I would, for the lack of a better word, I would say it's a design, build, operate, and partially financing structure. I mean, you can say it's a hybrid structure. But here, the most important thing is that we have the flexibility in planning and execution of design, EPC, and O&M. So what is the difference between a conventional DBO like in Karnataka versus the Coimbatore project? The difference is that as a bidder, I have the option of allocating funds between CapEx and OpEx. I may decide to have lesser CapEx or maybe defer CapEx over a period of time, okay? Versus let's spend 1,000 crores over that first 5 years, okay? And then probably less and spend less on assets. On the other hand, we have the option of, let's say, okay, we spend 500 crores in the first 4 or 5 years, and then the rest of the money we actually spend over a period of time. So it's a matter of strategy, it's a matter of what's the overall approach of the operator is. So most importantly, another basic difference between this and the DBO structure is that unlike a DBO model where BOQ-based works program is the basis of the entire works program. Here, BOQ is not pre-decided in the tender. We only come up with a construction quote. So it's like, let's say if I quote 700 crores, that is the kind of envelope, which a CapEx envelope that I have. And during the study period, after we do an exhaustive study of the project area, we decide the priorities and accordingly build the BOQ. So in other words, if we don't want to replace, let's say 100% of the network, 100% of the pipe network, that's fine. I mean, that's up to us. We may decide to spend more on, let's say, digital tools. We may decide to spend more on house service connections as opposed to pipes, or vice versa. So all those kinds of combinations is something which is clearly given as an option to the bidder. Okay, and like a good contract, it has very outcome-based approach with realistic KPIs. So what I mean to say is that this is a structure where we have flexibility in deciding how we want to approach the whole project. Okay? So let me not digress from the topic of the day, and let me just focus on projects in Karnataka, which is the DBO structure. Okay. As I said, that all these projects in Karnataka we are doing are still work in progress. I mean, we started, except for the one in Bangalore, which is the central part of the Bangalore city. All of the projects actually started sometime in 2018-19. And since then, we had, COVID has ensured that there is little progress in construction, but I will just take you through some of those. So, but the Central Bangalore project in Karnataka, which is a JICA funded project, the objective was UFW reduction. Okay, and this is a project in which the entire construction is completed. And as you can see from this slide, it's stuck. Maybe just 1 second. I'm sorry, my laptop is stuck. Yeah, okay. So as you can see from this slide, when we started the project, that was, when we took over the project, I would say the initial baseline was 61%. Okay, and as we started and as we completed construction, okay, and started doing and while we are maintaining through a very, very intensive leak detection process, the UFW as we speak as of March 21 is 23%. So there is a kind of reduction which we have managed to achieve. Here again, as I said, the project for the loss reduction contract, and that was the metric, that was the KPI. Okay, and since this was the UFW project, when we started, we have actually managed to from almost 2 MLD of accounted for water. As we speak, as of March 21, we have about 43-44 MLD of water which is accounted for. So that is the kind of volume. That is the kind of volume of water which now can be used to supply more to the same area. So, similarly, Davanagere, I mean, so I will use this as an example to explain how a typical contract in Karnataka is. I mean, this is a standard ADB structure. This is Davanagere. Many of you probably would know is about, I would say it's a 3-4 hour drive from Bangalore city on the Bangalore-Pune highway. It's got a population of 500,000 people and with about 100,000 connections. Okay, this is the ADB funded project and the project has got 4 phases. So this is how I was saying that very clearly the contract spells out the 4 phases over the 12-year contract period. Here in this case again, the client said, or the tender said that the consultant has done a intensive study for 2 years before they made the DPR and on the basis of which tender has been launched. So they didn't want the operator come in and spend another 1 year in the study period. So what they said is that we give you only 5 months, which is not a full-fledged design phase. It's a design validation phase. So because the consultant had not done 100% of customer service, you are supposed to do that. Okay, whether it's possible or not in such a short span, that's a different argument. But I'm saying the tender document talks about 5 months of design validation phase. Okay, and if there is some discrepancy that we find, we have to point it out to the client, and then there can be some changes in the BOQ or some extra claims and so on. But as far as possible, you stick to the design or the BOQ which is given by the client in the tender document. Okay, then we have a 36-month, 3 years of the works phase. Okay, mind you, here again, it's a DMA approach. So this is also something which is prescriptive. Clients wants us to, I mean, I think there are about 50 odd DMAs. So clients wants us to implement those 54 and commission those 54 DMAs over a period of time. Okay, and here, and this is also an important point, which is actually very rightly done by KUADFC, is that in most of the projects, in most of the cities, you will find that while the cities are planning for a water distribution project, okay, often they ignore the bulk water supply part. They often forget that you also need to have a very strong bulk water supply, which would only then can make a city, which can make 24/7 possible. So in this particular case, the city came up with a bulk water supply contract, which is being done by a different contractor. Okay, so while we are doing the distribution package, the bulk water supply package is done by a different contractor. So after, hopefully, the idea of this thing was that by the end of the 41 month, by the time we complete our distribution, the bulk water supply contractor would also complete his package. Okay, and then there would be a 3 month of transition phase in which the bulk assets will be transferred to us. And from there on, it will be an 8-year O&M of both bulk as well as the O&M. So there is the contract structure. So as I said, I mean, here we start the O&M only after the entire works program is over. Okay. So in terms of the scope matrix during the O&M phase, as I said, bulk water supply during the design and works phase will be done by the Davanagere Council and or the contractor. They will be responsible for the bulk water supply assets. On the other hand, once we have taken over during the transition and O&M phase, we as the operator will be responsible for not only the bulk, but even the distribution assets. Okay.
Sorry for interrupting in the middle, sir. You have about another 4 to 5 minutes, sir. Please.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
That's right. So this is the main part. Yeah. So I was saying that, so this is how we actually are responsible. So the O&M matrix clearly spells out that we are responsible for meter reading and billing. For some reason, collection is something which is kept by Davanagere Council themselves. They will be responsible for it. Okay, which I can tell you, which is something which we don't like. As an operator, we also would like to be responsible for collection, because then it ensures that we will have the fund, or the client will have the funds to pay us the O&M fee. So here, the O&M, the performance during the O&M phase is governed by the fixed and the O&M fee. Here there's a 75-25 fixed and performance fee split. The 25% of performance fee is divided further into continuous water supply, NRW reduction, customer services, water quality, and so on. So that's how very, I would say, mechanically, the client has decided to structure the project and has prescribed an approach which the bidder is supposed to follow during the execution phase. Okay, the same structure is there in Bangalore, Udupi, Puttur. Okay, so I will not repeat those things, but this is a structure which we have achieved. As I said, we started these projects in 2017-18. It's still work in progress because not much construction could be done during the last 2 years, mainly affected by the COVID pandemic. But I would also briefly explain to you some of the KPIs and other service delivery metrics that we have achieved in other projects. In Delhi, as you can see, which has got a history of O&M, where the O&M started right next to, just simultaneously with the works program. So we could actually show some significant improvement in service delivery right from, I would say, first 6 months or 1 year. Okay, from 30,000 registered consumers, we increased it to 40,000 consumers within a matter of 1 year. Okay, which again now has improved 51,000. Similarly, as you can see, other metrics, bill volume, we have increased from 25 MLD to 43 MLD, which has resulted in increased revenue. So from the same project area, what DJB used to collect about 7.5 crores. It has gone up to 61 crores in 2021. So that is the kind of efficiency gains, that is the kind of the sustainability that we bring to the utility. Okay, similarly in Calcutta, I mean, you can see the NRW after we have commissioned the DMA from the baseline of 61%, we have managed to reduce the NRW to close to 16. And in some cases, we have managed to bring it down to even less than 7%. Okay. Similarly, in terms of 24/7, because that is something which is probably everyone is very keen to know whether it's possible, even in the city. As you can see from the two graphs, the first graph is where the intermittent supply before the implementation of works. You can see the erratic pressure levels at different pressure points in the DMA. And after we implemented and commissioned the DMA, you can find the uniform pressure. And at all stages, it mostly achieves the more than 7 meter, the KPI. Similarly, I mean, 24/7 projects are not just about engineering. There is a lot of social, campaigning, social work, explanation, IEC campaigns that one wants to carry. In Calcutta, where there was no history of meter reading or metering, I would say. There was a very, very good initiative called Jal Bandhu, which is a women's group, which actually explained and did a lot of advocacy work for promoting water conservation. Okay, so as I said, learnings and way forward. I mean, what we have learned from all these. If you ask me, which is the project structure, which we think is better for a country like India, I would say a design build operate structure like Coimbatore is much better, because it gives flexibility to an operator like us to bring in our skills. Okay, we are actually we can use our R&D, we can use our softwares, we can use our digital tools, we can help in optimizing the capex, and saving of those capex means that the clients actually gains. Okay. So this actually gives us much more flexibility to do well in the project. I would again say that most of the time, I mean, most of the projects in India, and this is unfortunately the case in most of the cities, is that projects are more about infrastructure creation. They are works dominated. But I would say that we should have equal or more O&M orientation, so as to ensure 24/7 supply or improvement in service delivery. For that, it's very important to start O&M right from day one, parallelly with the design phase. Okay, and which I would think is one of the most important aspect. Okay, and whenever all of us, when we start a new project, my recommendation and my suggestion would be, don't get bogged down by data challenges. In India, we have a history of situations where not much effort or emphasis was there on asset management or improvement in operational data. There was not much emphasis on collecting data and looking at the holistic picture of water distribution. Okay, but data quality on assets will improve over time, and that's why when we start O&M initially, even parallel to the design phase, it helps us actually to use that availability of the ground data for better design and BOQ optimization. Okay, it helps us in streamlining the coordination, prioritization, and sequencing of project activities. Okay, and most importantly, even during that point of time, initially when we even before we complete construction, okay, we would have done a lot of work on leakage control and improve asset performance. That would help us in early transition, early switch over from intermittent to continuous water supply. So these are some of the small things. It looks very simple, but these are some of the small things that, if paid attention, especially as I said earlier, the bulk water supply, one needs assured bulk water supply, active leakage control measure, commercial loss reduction, so as to achieve a demand management driven system. Today we are in India, most of the cities follow the water rationing system. We have to switch to the the demand management system. We have to get over this habit of ad hoc operations, and where we do everything based on intuition. Okay, we have to move over to a system where we have most of the data. We look at holistically and actually plan for infrastructure and service delivery much ahead of its time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, friends, we heard Karnataka experience. Basically, it's a work in progress, as he said, but Karnataka has a history of introducing water sector reforms through public-private partnership. It has progressed very well. It has set a great example in Hubli Dharwad, but scaling up is also under progress. So I think there are a lot of lessons we can learn from Karnataka experience. Thank you, Mahendra, for giving this overview on what's happening in Karnataka, as well as your experience of Delhi and Karnataka, Delhi and Kolkata.